Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to learn about endocrine system part 1. In this system we are going to discuss about introduction to the glands, how many types of glands we have, and we are going to discuss in detail about the thyroid gland and the adrenal gland. Remaining other glands will be completed in endocrine system part 2. What are glands? An organ which secretes particular chemical substances for use in the body or for discharge into the surroundings. That is a gland. So there are three types of glands in our body. Number 1, endocrine gland. Number 2, exocrine gland. And number 3, heterocrine glands. What are exocrine glands? Exocrine glands are the glands that secrete their products into the ducts. Like example, we have the sweat glands, the salivary glands that secrete saliva through their ducts like parotid, submandibular and sublingual. Then the mammary glands, stomach is also considered as exocrine, and liver it is considered as both endocrine and exocrine gland. So these are the exocrine glands in the body. They secrete their secretions, and they pour the secretions directly into the ducts. What are endocrine glands? Now endocrine glands, they are ductless glands. They do not have ducts. So these glands secrete their products or the hormones directly into the bloodstream rather than through a duct. So these endocrine glands, they do not have ducts, and they secrete hormones which pour the secretions directly into the blood. That you have to remember. So this is about the endocrine system. Because it consists of endocrine glands, you must know what are endocrine glands. They are ductless glands and they pour the secretions directly into the blood but not through a duct. What are the examples of endocrine glands? We have pituitary gland located in the cerebrum. We can see here in the middle cranial fossa is the location of pituitary gland. Then we have pancreas located in the abdomen. Then we have thyroid gland located in the neck. Then we have adrenal glands which are located in the superior pole of the kidneys. Okay, so these are the examples of some endocrine glands which are located in the various parts of the body. What are heterocrine glands? These glands they perform both exocrine and endocrine function. For example, we have pancreas. So pancreas is considered as endocrine glands because it secretes hormones from the islets of Langerhans. We have insulin and the glucagon. And exocrine function, as you can see here, this is the duct of the pancreas, which is known as the main pancreatic duct. So it secretes pancreatic juice which is alkaline in nature. So it secretes pancreatic juice through the duct into the intestine, and it also secretes hormones from the islets of Langerhans. So that is why the pancreas is regarded as heterocrine glands, because it performs both exocrine and endocrine function. Endocrine system, it consists of glands and group of capillaries which facilitates diffusion of hormones to the bloodstream. So that you should know. It consists of group of capillaries and also glands which facilitates diffusion of hormones into the bloodstream. They are commonly referred as the ductless glands. I have already told you that endocrine glands are also known as ductless glands because they do not have ducts. Because of this reason, the hormones secreted directly into the bloodstream. Now this endocrine system, it consists of number of glands. You have to remember all these glands. If anybody asks you what are the endocrine glands, you have to name these glands. Pituitary gland, number 1, number 2, thyroid gland, then the parathyroid glands, adrenal or the suprarenal gland, pancreas and thymus gland. So these glands are regarded as the endocrine glands. So you should remember these names. Let us discuss in detail about the thyroid gland. It is very important question from examination point of view. It comes as a long answer question and also short notes in the exam. So the thyroid gland, it is a highly vascular endocrine gland. That means it has rich blood supply, and it lies in front of the neck and in front of the and also in front of the larynx, as you can see in this picture. So it lies in front of the neck and also in front of the larynx and the upper part of the trachea, opposite C5 to T1 vertebrae. Opposite the C5 to T1 vertebrae, that is the extent of the thyroid gland. Now the thyroid gland is the largest endocrine gland of the body. The hormones secreted by thyroid gland, they are T3, T4 and calcitonin. T3 is triiodothyronine, T4 tetraiodothyronine, commonly known as the thyroxine, and calcitonin. So these are the hormones secreted by the thyroid gland, and it is largest endocrine gland in the body. Coming to the dimensions and weight of the thyroid gland, it is butterfly shaped gland. It resembles the letter H, or you can say it is butterfly shaped. If you see the lobes of the thyroid gland, these are the two lateral lobes of the thyroid gland. They are pyramidal in shape. So lobes are pyramidal in shape, and if you see the measurements of the lobes of the thyroid gland, the length is 5 centimeters, width is 3 centimeters, and the thickness of the each lobe is 2 centimeters. Okay, so it has right and left lateral lobes, right, and connected by the isthmus. Isthmus is the central portion of the thyroid gland connecting the two lateral lobes. So each lobe measures about 5 into 3 into 2 centimeters. That means 5 centimeters in length, 3 centimeters width, and 2 centimeters in thickness. Whereas isthmus, it measures about 1.2 into 1.2 centimeters. Okay, the length and the thickness of the isthmus, and it weighs about 25 grams in females, and it is larger in females. It increases during pregnancy and menstruation. The size of the gland increases in females during pregnancy and menstruation. So you have to remember that the weight of the gland is 25 grams, and in female it increases during pregnancy and menstruation. Okay, so in this diagram we can make out this is the thyroid gland having two lateral lobes, the right lobe and the left lobe. The two lobes are connected by isthmus, which is in the midline, and there is an extension from the isthmus. This is known as the pyramidal lobe of the thyroid gland. Now coming to the location, we will discuss again the location of the thyroid gland. It is located in the lower part of the neck, and also the front and sides of the neck, opposite to the C5, C6, C7 and T1 vertebrae. Okay, this you have to remember. Each lateral lobe, that means this one and this one, each lateral lobe extends upwards up to the oblique line. This is the oblique line of thyroid cartilage, and below up to the 5th or 6th tracheal ring. So each lateral lobe extends up to the oblique line of the thyroid cartilage up to here, and below up to 5th or 6th tracheal ring. The isthmus extends across the midline in front of the 2nd, 3rd and 4th tracheal rings. In front of the 2nd, 3rd and 4th tracheal rings. This you have to remember. Now let us come to the various parts of the thyroid gland. It is 25 grams. This already we know, which is and it is a visceral component of the neck. Two lateral lobes connected by means of isthmus. So this is one lateral lobe and this is the other. Two are connected by isthmus. Lobes, they are conical, having apex and base. Three surfaces. This is the apex and this is the base of each lateral lobe. And apex, if you see, it is directed upwards, whereas the base, it extends, or also known as the lower pole, extends up to the 5th or 6th tracheal ring. Three surfaces we have: medial surface, which is related to the tubes, then posterior surface and anterolateral surface. These are the three surfaces of the thyroid gland: medial, posterior, anterolateral. Coming to the capsule of the thyroid gland, it is covered by two capsules. The thyroid, it is covered by two capsules. Number one is true capsule. It is innermost. The innermost is the true capsule of the thyroid. The innermost covering is known as a true capsule. Actually, it is a condensation of the fibrous stroma or connective tissue, and venous plexus lies deep to the true capsule. That you have to remember. So innermost layer covering the thyroid gland is the true capsule, and deep to the true capsule we have venous plexus. This you have to remember. Okay, then we have the outer false capsule. This is the outermost, which is covering the thyroid gland. The outer false capsule covering the thyroid gland. So it is derived from splitting of the pretracheal layer of deep cervical fascia of the neck. So the false capsule, it is derived from pretracheal layer of the deep cervical fascia. Let us learn in detail about the true capsule. It is a fibrous condensation of the connective tissue of the gland. Extension of the capsule into the body of the thyroid creates septae, which divide the gland into lobules. So the true capsule extends into the body of the thyroid, and which creates septae, and these septae, they divide the gland into various lobes. And I have already told you in the previous slide that deep to the true capsule we have venous plexus. Okay, arteries and plexus of veins, they lie deep to the true capsule. Let us discuss in detail about the false capsule. I have already told you that it is derived from the splitting of the pretracheal fascia. It is thin along the posterior border of the lateral lobe, and it is thick on the medial surface of the lobe. So medial surface of the lateral lobe is nothing but it is related to trachea and esophagus. So if you trace above, the pretracheal fascia after enclosing the thyroid gland attached to the oblique line of the thyroid cartilage. This I have shown you in the previous slides. What is the oblique line of thyroid cartilage? And the body of the hyoid bone in the midline. On the medial surface of the thyroid lobe, it thickens to form suspensory ligament of Berry. So this you have to remember. On the medial surface of the thyroid lobe, the pretracheal fascia, it thickens to form suspensory ligament of Berry, which connects the lobe of the to the cricoid cartilage. This is very, very important. This you have to remember. Now vertically, the fascia is attached to the hyoid bone. You can see here the pretracheal fascia is attached to the hyoid bone, and then downwards it encloses the thyroid gland and runs downwards into the superior mediastinum and finally gets attached to the pericardium. Coming to the relations of the thyroid gland, it has got the medial surface, anterolateral surface and posterior surface. What are the relations of the medial surface? Medial surface of the thyroid related to two tubes, esophagus and trachea. So where is we can make out here the trachea and the esophagus, and this is a section of the thyroid gland. Okay, this is the pink color. This is thyroid gland, and this is the medial surface which is related to trachea and esophagus. And two muscles, the cricothyroid and inferior constrictor of the pharynx, which is not shown here. The cricothyroid and inferior constrictor of the pharynx. Two nerves, external and recurrent laryngeal nerves. External and recurrent laryngeal nerves. Anterolateral surface is related to three muscles. We can see here this is the anterolateral surface of the thyroid gland, the sternohyoid, sternothyroid and sternocleidomastoid. Posteriorly, it is related to carotid sheath. We can see here carotid sheath and also the parathyroid glands and the carotid sheath with its contents. We can make out interjugular vein and carotid arteries are the contents in the carotid sheath. Okay, these are the relations of the surfaces of the thyroid gland. The dense venous plexus, unlike that of the prostate gland, lies deep to the true capsule. So here you have to remember that in the previous slides I have told you that there is a venous plexus lies deep to the true capsule. Therefore, to avoid hemorrhage during thyroidectomy, that means removal of the thyroid gland, the gland is removed along with the true capsule. This you have to remember. Now here we can make out the location of the true capsule in case of the thyroid gland. This is the false capsule and this is the true capsule. So venous plexus lies deep to the true capsule, unlike the prostate gland. In the prostate gland, you can see the venous plexus lies in between the true and the false capsule. Okay, so it is a comparison relationship of the venous plexus related to thyroid gland and to the prostate, with the true and false capsules around these organs. So in case of prostatectomy, you have to remove the gland, leaving behind the two capsules, the true and false capsule, to avoid the hemorrhage. And in case of thyroid gland, to avoid hemorrhage, you have to remove the gland along with the true capsule. Now clinical anatomy. The fascia forms the outer false capsule of the thyroid gland posterior part, which is thin and not well defined. Hence the thyroid swelling grows posteriorly and may compress the esophagus, causing dysphagia, difficulty in swallowing. So this you have to remember. Thyroid gland moves with deglutition as the posterior aspect of the gland is attached to the cricoid cartilage. So during swallowing, the thyroid gland also moves. So it is attached by a thickening of the pretracheal fascia known as ligament of Berry, or the suspensory ligament of the thyroid gland. So during thyroid surgery, the ligament of Berry has to be cut to mobilize the thyroid gland. Each lobe has apex, base, three surfaces. Lateral are the superficial. You can see here. Medial, related to the two tubes. Posterior, lateral, two borders, anterior and posterior border. We can see an anterior border and a posterior border. Isthmus has got superior border, inferior border, anterior surface and posterior surface. Let us discuss about the apex of the gland. Apex is directed upwards and slightly laterally. It extends up to the oblique line of thyroid cartilage. Already I have told you, where it is limited above by the attachment of three muscles. What are those muscles? The limited by the attachment of the sternothyroid muscle. So this we can see, this is the apex of the thyroid gland. It is limited above by the attachment of the sternothyroid muscle. The apex is sandwiched between the inferior constrictor and sternothyroid laterally. This is sternothyroid and this is the inferior constrictor. So it is present in between the two muscles, inferior constrictor and the sternothyroid muscle. Base extends up to the fifth or sixth tracheal ring. It is related to the inferior thyroid artery and recurrent laryngeal nerve. Anterolateral surface or the superficial surface, it It is convex and it is covered by skin fascia. Three strap muscles already I have shown you in the previous diagram: sternohyoid, sternothyroid, and superior belly of homohyoid. And also the anterior border of sternocleidomastoid overlapping it inferiorly. So in this diagram we can make out the various relations of the surfaces of the thyroid gland. Relations of the lateral surface: the sternocleidomastoid, homohyoid, sternothyroid, and sternothyroid. These are the relations of the lateral surface of the thyroid gland. Relations of the medial surface: two tubes, the trachea, esophagus, and recurrent laryngeal nerve. Relations of the posterolateral surface: carotid sheath with its contents, containing common carotid interjugular vein and vagus nerve. Coming to the anterior border is thin, separates the superficial and medial surfaces related to the anterior branch of the superior thyroid artery. This is the relation of the anterior border. It is related to the anterior branch of the superior thyroid artery. Coming to the posterior border is rounded, related to the superior and inferior parathyroid glands. We can see here the superior and inferior parathyroid glands. It also related to the anastomosis between the superior and inferior thyroid arteries. We can see the anastomosis between superior and inferior thyroid arteries. Coming to the isthmus of the thyroid gland, it connects the two lobes, quadrilateral in shape, present in front of the second, third, fourth tracheal rings. It has two surfaces, already I have told you, anterior and posterior surface, two borders, the superior border and inferior border, and a pyramidal lobe. Coming to the relations of the isthmus: anterior surface to the skin, superficial fascia and deep fascia; posterior surface to the second, third tracheal rings. Upper border projection called pyramidal lobe. We can see here the upper border of the isthmus related to pyramidal lobe, connected to the hyoid bone by a fibromuscular structure which is known as levator glandulae thyroideae. Levator glandulae thyroideae. The superior border is related to anastomosis between anterior branches of two superior thyroid arteries and inferior border. So superior border is related to anterior branches of anastomosis between the two superior thyroid arteries. Inferior border: along this border inferior thyroid vein emerges and thyroidema artery also emerges. So this is the inferior border. Along this inferior thyroid vein emerges and also the one artery occasionally, that is thyroidema artery, related to the inferior border of the isthmus of the thyroid gland. Pyramidal lobe of the thyroid gland: 50% of the thyroid glands have pyramidal lobe. You can see here it is a remnant of the thyroglast cell duct, extends superiorly from the isthmus to the isthmus of the thyroid gland. Fibrous tissue connecting pyramidal lobe with the hyoid bone contain the levator glandulae thyroideae. A band of connective tissue, often containing accessory thyroid tissue, may continue from the apex of the pyramidal lobe, and this is accessory thyroid tissue we can make out. Coming to the arterial supply, the thyroid gland is supplied by superior thyroid artery, inferior thyroid artery, and thyroidema artery. Okay, so these are the three arteries supplying the thyroid gland. Blood supply of the thyroid gland: arterial supply, superior thyroid artery. It is a branch of the external carotid, runs downwards forwards with intimate relation to the external laryngeal nerve. So this is superior thyroid artery. So it runs in relation with, intimately related to the external laryngeal nerve, divides into anterior and posterior branches. The inferior thyroid artery is a branch of thyrocervical trunk. So we can see here the inferior thyroid artery. It is a branch from the thyrocervical trunk which is from the subclavian artery. It runs medially, then downwards to reach the lower pole of the thyroid gland. Its terminal part intimately related to the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Thyroidema artery, it is present in three subjects or 3% individuals. Arises from brachiocephalic artery or aortic arch, ascends in front of the trachea and reaches the isthmus. Then we have accessory thyroid arteries, come from the tracheal and esophageal vessels. Coming to the venous drainage of the thyroid gland, all the thyroid veins do not accompany the arteries. three pairs of veins from the venous plexus present deep to the true capsule. Superior thyroid vein emerge from the upper pole of the thyroid gland. So we can see a superior thyroid gland emerging from the upper pole of the gland, and it terminates in the internal jugular vein. Middle thyroid vein emerges from the middle of the thyroid lobe or the gland and drains into the internal jugular vein. Then we have inferior thyroid vein. So we can see here, this is the inferior thyroid vein, emerged from the lower border of the isthmus and descends in front of the trachea. Right and left veins, inferior thyroid veins, communicate to form plexus in front of trachea, and they drain into the brachiocephalic vein, that is left brachiocephalic veins. There is one more vein, vein of Kocher. Sometimes a fourth vein emerges between the middle and the inferior thyroid veins, which drains into the internal jugular vein. Lymphatic drainage, upper lateral portion, upper deep cervical nodes. The upper lateral portion deep drains into upper deep cervical nodes. Lower lateral portion into the lower deep cervical nodes. Upper medial portion to prelaryngeal group of lymph nodes. Lower medial portion into the pretracheal nodes. Coming to the nerve supply, parasympathetic is by the vagus and recurrent laryngeal nerve. Sympathetic, superior, middle and inferior cervical sympathetic ganglions. They supply the thyroid gland. Thyroid enlargement. The normal thyroid gland is impalpable. The term goiter, from Latin word that gutter is the throat, is used to describe the generalized enlargement of the thyroid gland. Classification of the thyroid swellings: simple goiter we have, toxic goiter and neoplastic goiter. Simple goiter may develop as a result of stimulation of the thyroid gland by thyroid stimulating hormone, either as a result of inappropriate secretion from a microadenoma in the anterior pituitary. Microadenoma of anterior pituitary, which is rare, or in the response to the chronically low levels of circulating thyroid hormones. So that leads to simple goiter. The daily requirement of the iodine is about 0.1 to 0.15 milligrams. So in this picture we can make out the enlargement of the thyroid gland or the simple goiter. Diffuse toxic goiter, Graves' disease, or diffuse vascular goiter appearing at the same time as the hyperthyroidism and associated with the eye sign. So the syndrome is that of the primary thyrotoxic causes. 50% of the patients have family history of autoimmune endocrine disease. Coming to the parathyroid glands, they are oval in shape. We can see here, present in the posterior border of the thyroid gland, 4 in number, 2 superior and 2 inferior parathyroid glands. Secretes parathormone, which controls the calcium and phosphorus metabolism. Blood supply of the parathyroid glands: inferior thyroid artery, anastomosis between the superior and inferior thyroid arteries, veins, lymphatics follow the thyroid gland. Nerve supply: superior and middle cervical sympathetic ganglia, superior and middle cervical sympathetic ganglia, and plexus around the inferior thyroid arteries. They supply the parathyroid gland. Applied anatomy: accidental removal of the parathyroid is possible during thyroidectomy to avoid the risk of posterior part of the lateral lobe, the thyroid gland, left behind. Hypoparathyroidism, tetany, hypocalcemia, carpopedal spasm and convulsions. We can see in these diagrams the carpopedal spasm on the right side, and we can make out, and the convulsions are seen in the hypoparathyroidism. Hyperparathyroidism seen in tumors of the gland, softening of bones with cyst formation, bowing and fractures of the bones due to decalcification, hypercalcemia, stone formation in urinary tracts.